Welcome to Fantasy Island. So I really didn't think anybody would care about this movie, but I'm still having people ask about it, like people coming into my stream asking about it, people are asking for videos, I'm getting like Instagram DMs, so I figured, let's do it. Let's talk about Fantasy Island. Now I was honestly planning on tackling this kind of loosely in a video I've been working on that just talks about all of the, questionable horror movie releases that have come out in the new year, because there are many, and then like sprinkle in the stuff that's actually genuinely worth your time. But there is definitely enough to talk about just in Fantasy Island, so why the hell not? Let's do it. This is also going to be loaded with spoilers because I just really don't care. So if that's not kind of what you're in the mood for and you actually really care about watching this movie, just go watch it. So here we finally have the second installment of the Blumhouse Lucy Hale cinematic universe and her second Scary Island movie of her career. Round of applause for Lucy. Now, Blumhouse themselves have an interesting track record. On the one hand, they're behind amazing movies like Get Out and Whiplash that still get discussed today. But their reputation as a whole is the reason why at last year's Sundance, when the Blumhouse logo flashed on screen before a movie, one of the press and industry Jews just burst out laughing and walked his ass out of the theater. So essentially, you never know what you're gonna get. They've got low budgets, but often produce some of the best and most talked about films for years to come, and I'm usually down for even the worst of Blumhouse films. I had a ton of fun with Truth or Dare when I caught it at home, and maybe that's the key, catching it at home. On the comfort of your couch and not in a theater filled with teenagers on their phones, always up in the air in their faces. Anyways. But the concept here is actually good. Nabbed and retconned from no television show of the same name, but still solid. You get an island that makes people's deepest fantasies come true. And there are a lot of ways you can make this work. You can make it work as a drama, you can make it work as a comedy, and especially as a horror. Fantasy Island tried to do all of the above at the same time, but the fantasies themselves are self-appointed. If it was a real Fantasy Island, you figure you would just show up and it would give you the thing that you secretly want the most. Which it does, but only one time for one person. Patrick here says he wants to be a soldier, but what he really wants is to see his daddy again. But later on, when Gwen regrets her fantasy, she uses that as a loophole. That the moment she said she regretted wasn't actually the one she really did, so the island got it wrong, so she still owed her fantasy. Even though the only two rules of the islands are no new fantasy, and each fantasy must be seen to its logical conclusion. Literally the only two established rules in this entire movie. Why did you even establish them? Basically, I'm saying this movie is just loaded with inconsistencies and conveniences as the characters need them. And it's for some of the aforementioned reasons that this movie actually gets a little bit more heartwarming in areas than I anticipated it to. But anyways, as made abundantly clear in the trailers and by the fact that this is a Blumhouse movie, the fantasies get twisted. And not because these people are weirdos into perv torture shit, except Lucy Hale, she's super into it, which I kind of dig.
I've always wanted to hear you say that.
I hate myself. But no, the fantasies get twisted for more sinister reasons, which are also all gonna get inconsistent. Other people have come here and had positive experiences. I don't understand, but we'll get to that. So again, Patrick wants to be a soldier. Gwen regrets not saying yes to a proposal like 5 years ago. Lucy Hale wants revenge on her childhood bully. Then there's these two idiots who wish for everything, and the island gives them a drug and alcohol fueled model party. The whole weekend is orchestrated by Michael Peña's version of Rourke, which definitely flips things up from the original, where Rourke always kind of felt like he was either an extension of the island or where like the real supernatural aspect was coming from. Whereas in this movie, he becomes more of somebody who's essentially forced to do the island's bidding. So you might be wondering how all these people got the luxury for this incredible experience. So am I. We're immediately told they want a competition, but we never find out what the competition was. And with the island's tendency to twist fantasies and people's general unwillingness to think of most of the realities behind some of the things they're asking for, you'd think this place would have a bunch more sketchy reviews. Like, can you imagine one of the people in this movie leaving and then like going on Yelp and giving a positive experience review to the whole thing? I also assume Yelp has to be a sponsor because they mentioned it at least 3 times throughout. So in terms of execution, this movie's pretty split. It starts doing a good job teaching people lessons of how your life and the things you've gone through are important for who you are, but then it just gets so caught up with trying to wind in these twists and completely inconsistent elements, but no twist ends up being surprising at all by the time you get to it. It also spends entirely way too much time trying to explain things, and I guess if their logic is that most of the people watching this movie are teenagers on their cell phones during the movie, they want to really make sure that even if you're only half paying attention to the movie, you can follow along with the plot, because That's how you make movies. It's also loaded with a bunch of horrible jokes, bad punchlines, awkward dialogue, which honestly wasn't really outside my expectations for this. So now we're getting down to some of the super spoilers. So again, as mentioned, Lucy Hale is trying to get revenge on a childhood bully. And after a super drawn out explanation that probably could have been shown in a better way, we learn that this bully really sucked and kind of ruined her life, and I can totally understand why she would want revenge on this person. You just have to realize eventually that the best revenge is just living a better life. But anyways, you get the scene from the trailer where she's down in that basement-looking room torturing her bully, thinking it's a hologram, but then realizing, oh man, it's real. She's really in front of me. And she's genuinely shocked and breaks her out, and sure enough, everything up to here seems fine. Wanting to live out a fantasy of hurting the people that have hurt you is totally normal, but in reality, it's not something that anybody would really want to go through with, especially when it's not just, I want to like take out some frustrations on a theoretical hologram bully and like actively torture and murder someone. But here's the big twist. When Gwen gets her second round fantasy, we learn that she accidentally started a fire in her apartment that resulted in someone's death. And instead of just sending her back to before she started the fire so that she could just not do that, they send her back during the blaze. Because it's a movie. But yeah, because of this fire, somebody in another apartment ends up getting trapped. She tries to free him. We quickly find out that all the people on the island were present during this fire. Patrick was the cop who wouldn't go in and get involved until the fire department showed up. The two idiot bros were his roommate that left without him because they assumed he was out on a date. And the only one not present was Lucy Hale. I know she has a name in this movie, but I just really like calling her Lucy Hale. Lucy Hale. And we find out the reason why Lucy wasn't there is because she's the girl he was supposed to be on a date with. So, oh my God, guys, this whole thing was actually just her fantasy all along. To torture and kill the people she feels are responsible for the guy she wanted to date's death. Even though she still got the bully fantasy and still seemed very convinced that the whole thing was real, even though she would have already known that the whole thing was real because that wasn't actually her fantasy, and it just makes less sense the more you try to think about it. It also goes against the rule for one fantasy per guest because she definitely wanted revenge against this person and clearly was just set up to make it seem like she was equally as involved in this messed up situation as everybody else. Like, there was literally no reason for that bully storyline to even be in here in the grand scheme of things because that bully has nothing to do with what happened with this guy. So she's definitely double dipping. She's getting a 2 for fantasy. And if you kind of keep thinking, you gotta wonder, like, how did she know that all these people were involved? Like, I can understand how she could get Patrick's name because he was a police officer on duty, but how did she know that that cop didn't go in when he arrived? And I get that she could figure out the roommates' names, but how did she know they left him there? How did she know that they weren't already out? And I guess it seems unlikely that she could know where or how the fire started, but if you kind of assume that they say, yeah, it was started in one of the units in the apartment, you could kind of figure out which one it was, but then you have to go the extra step to figure out who lived there. Unless the fantasy was just vengeance overall and the island just knew who was technically involved in the orchestration of this guy's death indirectly. Because it's not like anybody directly was like, I'm gonna lock you in this room so you burn to death. It was all just an accident. So unless the island's really going that extra next step and finding people, which I guess makes sense, but we don't get that. That's not the impression that you get when you're watching it. Like, she seemed like she knew 100% and that she was planning this whole thing and orchestrating it out so she could get to this island. Like, the average person's just gonna be like, what a tragic accident this was. But not Lucy Hale. Not Lucy Hale. But besides all that, you might think, yeah, totally logical. Your boyfriend dies in a totally preventable way. I'd be out for death too. They had talked once before. One time. It was a really good one time, and he made her feel more normal than anybody else in the world, but one time. He died during what would have been their first official date. Girl, you gotta learn to let some shit go. And this also makes it seem like the reason why their fantasies got twisted is because they were actually in her fantasy all along, but Michael Rooker is actually trapped on the island and openly says that the island twists things. So is everyone just destined for a horrific experience? Do you just need to be super specific about what you want so that doesn't happen? I have no idea, and it doesn't matter. Again, I just think back to anybody who's gotten off the island, like, why would this place have any positive reviews at this point? I don't know. It doesn't matter. So yeah, it all gets exposed, but surprise, the bully can also get a wish now if she drinks some of the water, because that's how it's the magic of the islands through the water. So she drinks water from this canteen that Lucy Hale had and just conveniently drops randomly. And I distinctly remember being like, why would you drop that? Like, what was the purpose of you dropping that water? And I get it. And once you find out the reveal, it's like, oh, she has no intention of like exposing what's going on the island. That's why she drops it. But it's such a random, they could have done something where she gets caught on something and then she has to run and then it just falls. But it's literally just kind of like, it was so blatantly obvious and awkward. But either way, so she takes a gulp, and rather than wishing for something like, I wish none of this had ever happened and that we were all just back home, she wishes for Lucy and the guy to be together forever. So this literal burned zombie comes up out of the water, drags her under, and then she pulls a literal Jason Voorhees, jumps back up, takes the big breath, and then gets drug right back down. Like, that was their attempt at a jump scare. Like, can't you just leave this poor man alone? He already burned to death, and now you gotta bring his spirit and burned corpse back into it. So it ends, some more dumb stuff happens, and it leaves on the definite potential for a sequel, which some of you might be wondering, like, this is getting pretty bad reviews. I don't think it made that much money. How would they ever manage to make a sequel? Well, you remember before how I said that Blumhouse tends to make things for like dirt cheap? This movie cost $7 million to make, most of which I assume went to renting the cruise liner that they needed to bring over the cast, the crew, and the gear. And it has now made $35.3 million worldwide, which for a lot of other movies is seen as a failure. But for a movie that cost $7 million, that's a lot of money. So great success! Also, I'd like to note that Truth or Dare cost $3.5 million and was by the same director and essentially the same creative team. So they were so happy with Truth or Dare that they doubled this man's budget. So I know we just spent the last however many minutes this video ends up being like dunking on this movie, but I didn't hate it as much as a lot of other people seem to. Like, I think I gave it a 2 out of 5 on Letterboxd, which is like, I guess probably shockingly high the more I think about it. I think it just tried to be a few too many things and kind of lost track of something that could have been a really interestingly executed plot, which I guess at sometimes almost makes it worse. Like when you have all of the building blocks to make something really great and then you still just don't really manage to nail it, and there's really no excuse for not nailing it, that's almost more frustrating than if the whole thing's just a massive failure. But I like Lucy Hale and I like her demented plan of just ruining everything for the people who stole her potential love. But there are just so many inconsistencies in this movie, and it doesn't go quite ridiculous enough to really laugh at it. So my verdict here is watch it at home with a group of friends on the couch so that maybe you can occasionally yell at it and just have a good time. So those are my thoughts on Fantasy Island. Let me know what you guys are thinking in the comment section down below. Movies have to hit like a certain threshold for me to like really hate them and just really be super bothered by them. And this didn't quite hit it. Like I went to go see a Blumhouse horror movie by the same team that made Truth or Dare. My expectations were massively low. It's not the worst experience. So let me know what you guys are thinking in the comment section down below. Thank you as always to all my Patreon supporters. You make my day a lot less stressful. And just thank you to anybody who's subbed to this channel in general. You guys are literally changing my life. So thank you all so much for stopping by. I hope you all have a fantastic day, and we'll catch you all later.